Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all our eminent panelists and participants who have joined us today for this virtual debut of the publication Incredible Treasures, World Heritage Sites of India, published by UNESCO and MAPIN. This evening, we have two power-packed panels, including policymakers and the World Heritage experts of India, sharing their vision on the future of our World Heritage sites. What is India's strategy for World Heritage? How many more can be added to this list? Do the inscribed sites represent India's outstanding repository of cultural and natural heritage? What stories do they tell? What is extraordinary about each site? How are they managed? What are the gaps that we need to refill? These are few of the aspects for focusing our dialogue today on the global legacy of this country. We will begin with the inaugural panel that includes opening remarks from the Director, UNESCO New Delhi, followed by the CEO NITI Ayog, the Secretary Ministry of Culture, DG ASI, and the Chairman National Biodiversity Authority. I will now request Mr. Falt, who is Director and UNESCO representative to Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Shikha. I will, of course, recognize you better in a minute, because the book we're launching today is the collective work of many, but it would certainly not have been possible without you. This is a very special moment, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome everyone present with us virtually. Tonight is actually the culmination of 3 years of work, and I'm glad to be in the company of dear friends and colleagues, but also members of the general public, to launch our UNESCO MAPIN publication, Incredible Treasures, UNESCO World Heritage Sites of India. Incredible Treasures is the first effort to capture the marvelous diversity of India's World Heritage Sites in a single volume, packed with rich texts and photographs, never assembled before in such a format, and it is a great honor to present this publication. India is truly incredible, and the World Heritage Sites presented here span the entire history and geography of the country. I am absolutely certain that this book will be a definitive reference and will help build greater awareness about India's World Heritage Sites among specialists and other readers alike in India and abroad. We also hope it will encourage everyone to support efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. As I'm sure you all know, there are now 40 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India, with the recent additions of Kakatiya Rudreshwara, Ramappa Temple, and Dholavira, a Harappan city, inscribed only last month, and that we feature in a special supplement to the book. With these two latest inscriptions, India continues to expand its global cultural footprint and contributes to the shared heritage of humanity. Since every World Heritage Site in India depicts a different facet of its great cultural diversity and civilizational evolution, it was by no means an easy endeavor to put this book together. And it is actually incredible that we were able to pull this off. When I first dreamed of this publication 3 years ago, I was not quite sure how to go about it. First, we needed a solid partner, the best art publisher in India. And I'm so glad that, thanks to the advice of friends, I was able to meet Bipin Shah, who leads MAPIN Publishing. Bipin is not only a consummate professional and internationally known for the quality of his publication, but he's also a wonderful person who has now become a friend. We then had to secure some seed funding, and I'm extremely grateful to Manasi Kirloskaratata and France Marquet of the South Asia Foundation, who immediately saw the value of the project and provided the generous necessary support. Of course, the two editors of the book also deserve special recognition. Shikha Jain, director of DRONAH, is one of India's foremost experts. She is extremely rigorous and attentive to detail. And my dear friend, Vinay Shil Oberoi, former ambassador and permanent delegate of India to UNESCO, who unfortunately passed away when we were putting the finishing touches to the publication, and who would have so loved to see the final result. I have special thoughts for his wife, Nandini, who I believe is with us tonight. Thanks to Shikha and Vinay's unstinting support and expertise, we were able to assemble the best possible team of experts from the fields of architecture, cultural conservation, sustainable heritage development, wildlife, and ecology, of course, as well. I also wish to recognize very warmly Rohit Chawla, who has curated the photographs for this book and guided what is, of course, an essential aspect of a publication like this, the visual element. His photograph for the Taj Mahal, which graces the Indian cover of the book, is simply awe-inspiring. And I would like to thank also Amitabh Kant, Chief Executive NITI Ayog, who guides us in his forward towards the next priorities for India's cultural heritage and some of the themes which will be a part of our webinar discussion today. Available now in India, in most of Europe, and in the United States. We hope that Incredible Treasures will make its way towards wider audiences and increase the interest in India's treasure trove of cultural heritage. I'm sure that today's discussion will be very fruitful and lead to other thematic conversations on this topic in the coming months. So thank you very much, and back to you, Shikha.
Thank you, Mr. Eric Falt, for that excellent introduction and for acknowledging all the contributions. To reiterate, definitely the person I'm missing most today is my co-editor and my mentor, late Sri Vinay Shil Oberoi. Moving forward, I will now request Sri Amitabh Kant, Chief Executive Officer of NITI Ayog, the public policy think tank of the Government of India, to share his vision and action plan for our natural heritage, for our national heritage.
Mr. Eric Falt and all the distinguished guests, my colleague, Mr. Raghvendra Singh, Ms. Vidhyawati, Dr. V.B. Mathur, all the distinguished guests, I'm truly delighted to be at the launch of the UNESCO map and publication, Incredible Treasures, UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India. It's a great pleasure to be present here. This is for the first time that such a comprehensive and visually rich compendium has come out covering all 38 UNESCO sites. It is also a day to celebrate the inscription of the 39th and 40th site, the Kakatiya Rudeshwara Ramappa Temple and Dholavera, a Harappan city in the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. India is actually a living museum blessed with a rich history and vibrant heritage and culture. The vision of India's heritage management is to value, protect, conserve, interpret, and foster India's unique and diverse archaeology as a channel for continuing cross-cultural linkages at the international level. NITI Ayog has initiated a nationwide effort to understand the current challenges for heritage management in India and to provide a future roadmap along with an appropriate branding of India's invaluable archaeological and built heritage. We are also ensuring guidance to the concerned heritage custodians of these World Heritage Sites, including the nodal agency, Archaeological Survey of India, to further enhance, conserve, and promote these locations for local communities as well as visitors. We are also developing a database of 1 lakh heritage structures. The work is almost done. We have got pictures of around 60,000 sites. Now we envision developing an online GIS-linked database. India has played a key role as a member to the World Heritage Committee for 3 terms since its ratification in 1977. We are concerned with the significant role of safeguarding these World Heritage Sites for posterity and deeply encourage the intercultural exchanges with other countries for this purpose. We recognize the need for capacity building, use of technology in the sphere of World Heritage. The UNESCO Category 2 Center for Natural Heritage at the Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun, is already functioning to provide guidance and training for the entire Asia Pacific region. A parallel initiative for establishing a cultural Category 2 Center of UNESCO at Asia Pacific level is in progress with the Archaeological Survey of India. I would like to emphasize that India needs a clear nomination strategy. Serial and transnational nominations need to be explored more and more actively. Now that only one inscription is possible per year per country, which I think is very, very unfair for India because of its unique rich heritage, and transnational nominations are exempt from this ceiling. So transnational nominations are critical, important, and very significant. India can join another country and propose the transnational nomination through them. For example, inscription of Chandigarh Capital Complex as part of transnational inscription with France was done in 2016, and it was achieved in this very manner. More excavated sites of prehistoric, Neolithic, and Harappa period need to be undertaken for World Heritage nomination. Serial nominations for Buddhist sites should be considered, which is also transnational with countries like Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, etc. We need to collaborate with the member states in protecting and conserving the transnational heritage sites, which ultimately is physical boundaries and belong to humanity. We also need capacity building for nomination and site management. India has more than 40 sites on the tentative list, with a large number of them belonging to different states who do not have knowledge on the process of nomination, dossiers, and management plans for inscribing these sites on the World Heritage List. There should be regular training programs for nomination processes and management plans for this purpose. The programs can be organized in collaboration with the UNESCO C2C Center at WII Dehradun. Even after the inscription, it is a continuous effort towards conservation and maintenance of the site, which we all must focus on. Here, role of communities along with the government and private players play an important role in management of these sites. With this, I look forward to congratulating UNESCO for this extensive research and publication, in which very major role has been played by both Shikha Jain and a colleague of mine, Dr. Vinayshil Oberoi, and I would like to compliment both of them. I would like to congratulate UNESCO for this extensive research and publication, and look forward to many more interventions of UNESCO in India. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for your inspiring thoughts, sir. Indeed, India has a vast heritage repository and huge potential for more World Heritage sites. And you have correctly mentioned about the transnational and the potential to have more heritage sites. Of course, transnational also is in the spirit of UNESCO Convention for collaboration with other cultures and countries. We would like to know more about the actions and the motivation that NITI Ayog is providing to other ministry and especially Ministry of Culture and ASI in taking forward World Heritage Sites nomination.
No, we work in very close partnership. Our belief is that India is a very unique and a very rich heritage. We need to do a lot of homework. Unfortunately, we are constrained by one nomination per year, which I personally feel is very, very unfair for a country with a very vast and rich heritage. And therefore, transnational nominations are one way. But we need to get out of the ceiling of one nomination per year. We also need to do a lot of more homework systematically and create a vast pipeline of professionally researched projects. And we are willing to assist and support all state governments in this exercise. Any state government which is willing to come forward, we'll be very delighted and happy to assist them and support them, so that we have a very good professional pipeline of such projects which can be taken up in subsequent years.
Thank you, sir. So just to, the point that you mentioned on the limitations that India has, I recall during the visit of DG UNESCO Paris once to India, she mentioned that India is so rich and diverse that it should probably have its own nomination at the national level. Would you say that is one way forward for India?
Well, that is one way forward, but that's not an adequate way forward. India can prepare its own list, but UNESCO's branding and UNESCO's stamp gives it a much greater authority. And also it ensures that we are able to conserve and preserve these monuments as well. Because of the vast pressure of population, in rapid urbanization, etc., there's pressure on some of these sites. But I still recall many years back when I was working in the Ministry of Tourism, some attempt at that bridge close to Hampi, simply because it was a UNESCO site. We could put our foot down and say that this site should remain in its original form, and we were able to preserve and conserve. And therefore, it's very, very important that these sites have the brand and the stamp of UNESCO.
Okay, I also see some questions from the audience for you, and it's from Andhra Pradesh and also from Gujarat. That it's a similar question. They are saying that we see our heritage sites in the states are in deplorable condition, and they seem low on governance priorities. So if you can, mention about the management initiatives or even the national level listing that NITI Ayog is undertaking.
So as I had spoken at length, we are doing this huge amount of work, research work around all these sites. But the important thing is that there has to be ownership of the state governments. It's a unique heritage. And, in several states, particularly in Gujarat and Andhra, state governments have come forward and played a very critical role. And to my mind, it's very important that many of the non-ASI sites are conserved, preserved, and better managed by the state governments. There is so much of heritage and wealth of heritage sites in India that it's not possible for one institution like ASI to manage them. And therefore, if many of these states have to emerge as major tourism destinations, both domestically and internationally, these sites are unique sites. Nowhere in the world will you have such unique sites. And there are so much of history behind them. They need to be conserved and preserved for posterity. And in addition to conservation and preservation, we need to create experiences around these sites. We need to light them better. I mean, in many of these states, anywhere you put your foot, you will have history behind it. And therefore, you need a massive movement around the ownership of these sites, not merely by the state, but by the people of that place. This vast wealth cannot survive without a huge mass movement about ownership of these sites by the people who are fully aware of it. And therefore, you need a Jan Andolan around heritage sites, around ownership, around culture, around the wealth of sites that you have. And once people take ownership and realize that this is a huge heritage, this is a huge wealth for it, and which will ensure that we are able to do sustainable and sensitive and responsible tourism around this movement will grow and blossom.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a very important point that you have mentioned on the people's movement for this. We'll now continue with the next panelist. Unfortunately, Secretary Culture, Government of India is unable to join us in person. We do have his message that he sent to us this morning. So I will request the organizers to put his message on the screen so that I can read it out. So Shri Raghvendra Singh, Secretary, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, his message is, my compliments to UNESCO New Delhi for producing a much needed and one of its kind publication on the World Heritage Sites of India. 2021 is a benchmark year for India's cultural heritage, as we have achieved inscription of a 39th and 40th World Heritage Sites with the recent inscription of Ramappa Temple in Telangana and the Dholavira Archaeological Site in Gujarat. The Ministry of Culture is committedly working with the ASI, Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change, and state governments to fill such significant gaps of regional history, Harappan civilization, and other important stages in India's civilizational history that may finally reflect a more representative list for India and South Asia region. As we are all aware, India has a vast repository of cultural heritage, and it is a challenge to select and qualify sites for placement on the tentative list and the World Heritage List. With 40 sites on the existing World Heritage List and more on the tentative list, we have considerable work ahead to protect and manage these sites as per international standards and UNESCO guidelines. It is extremely difficult for the Ministry of Culture to select only one cultural site for World Heritage nomination every year as per the permissible slot of nomination for every country. We truly recognize the value of the diverse and rich history and cultural sites of all regions across India, but during the selection for nomination every year, we have to carefully evaluate the protection and management status of the site itself, as it is a primary criteria for UNESCO. It is important for all stakeholders to understand the issues related to managing World Heritage sites. The Ministry of Culture constantly strives to provide guidance for future action to all states and union territories through its nodal body, ASI. Besides conservation, it is important for our World Heritage sites to have appropriate interpretation and connect to local people as well as tourists. Promotion of interpretation center and site museums are an essential component through which we need to promote our World Heritage sites. It is important to remember that when you present a site for World Heritage listing, it not only represents a region, but also the nation and the world as a whole. So its conservation, management, and promotion has to be at par with the best of cultural heritage monuments across the globe. When India finally decides to send a nomination dossier, then we ensure that both the dossier as well as the condition of protection, facilities, and management of the site are of highest standards. We also urge state governments to collectively look at joint management of cultural heritage sites when the site falls in more than one state or it is part of a cultural route, such as the tentative list sites of Satyagraha and the Imperial Highway Uttarapat Badshahi Sarak that cut across various states. The Ministry of Culture is always there to support your initiatives and encourages such collective efforts. On the international front, our special project MOSM aims to identify coastal cultural landscapes and routes for transnational nomination. We encourage the states and the union territories to work with Archaeological Survey of India and further identify sites and link existing sites on the tentative list from their area for this transnational nomination along the Indian Ocean to expand representation on India's cultural exchanges with the rest of the world. I will conclude with complimenting UNESCO on initiating this dialogue on the future of World Heritage sites in India and will reiterate the commitment of Ministry of Culture in supporting such initiatives in future. So that was the message from the Secretary, Ministry of Culture. I will now invite the head of the nodal organization for World Heritage Sites in India, Mrs. Vidhyawati, Director General ASI, to share with us ASI's action plan for World Heritage Sites.
Very good evening to all. I think the DG ASI perhaps is indisposed at the moment. She's gone for a meeting in the ministry. What I can do is, though of course I'm supposed to speak as a part of the panel also, but first of all, I would also like to join in congratulating UNESCO Delhi office, Eric Falt, Mapping Publishers, to you, Shikha, and late Mr. Vinesh Loveroy for coming up with such an excellent publication. Indeed, the need of the hour, and it's obviously a state-of-art publication, which is very well presented. So my compliments, and on behalf of the Archaeological Survey, my compliments to UNESCO Delhi office and Mapping Publishers. Just to briefly introduce to you the role of the Archaeological Survey of India. Well, as I think the Secretary's message, and prior to that, CEO Mr. Amitabh Kant's message, regarding the World Heritage and Indian context is concerned. Well, Archaeological Survey of India, apart from its other mandates like exploration, excavation, conservation, epigraphy, site museums, and etc., is also the nodal agency for World Heritage matters for cultural sites. So all the proposals that are prepared and submitted by India is basically scrutinized, processed by the ASI, and we also have an advisory committee on the World Heritage matters, and Dr. Shikha is of course a very important member of that committee. So we scrutinize all the proposals, technically process it, and then accordingly, the proposals are after the approval of the Ministry of Culture, because that's the nodal ministry. The proposals are sent to the World Heritage Center through our PDI office in Paris, PDI to UNESCO office, which is located in Paris. Now, of course, the World Heritage has of late, I would say, picked up, and many state governments, apart from Ministry of Environment, Forest, Ministry of Railways, and even other local bodies, for example, Jaipur, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Bombay Municipal Corporation, but many state governments are also coming forward to propose the nominations, which we personally think is a very encouraging trend, because there is a sort of an ownership now. Even if there are properties on the tentative list, which even though maybe say ASI monuments, but it is the state governments with whom we are working in tandem in ensuring that we put forward the best dossiers which are sent across. I think both CEOs and secretaries' points are extremely valid when they have raised their concern about only one nomination a year. And I think India has raised this point earlier also when, on previous occasions. And in fact, whenever recently when the Director General UNESCO was also there in India, so this aspect was raised before her as well. So we do feel, I mean, say, for example, if we already have 46 sites on the tentative list as of now, it means it takes 46 years to clear them and put them on the World Heritage list. So obviously India would want more sites per year to be inscribed. We were also concerned about the sort of how the process of operational guidelines or the nomination is also becoming a little bit more sort of cumbersome as well as time consuming. Now with the latest thing of having a preliminary assessment, the step that has been introduced, though it obviously is in operation from next year onwards, but it makes the process lengthier by 1 year. So that's, all these challenges that we are facing, and I hope, that India is trying to become a member of the World Heritage Committee. It's very sort of seriously pursuing that. And should we become the member, I think these are the issues of how to simplify the processes, thereby also ensuring that the rigor of having a site put on the World Heritage list is also maintained. And then also how our sort of relationship with advisory bodies, ICOMOS and IUCN, is something that we can further sort of strengthen that and make it more kind of credible, is something also that we are looking forward to. I think as of now, because I would leave the rest towards when the panel discussion is happening. So I think on behalf of the Director General ASI, I would like to just briefly put forward these points. But thank you very much for putting across this excellent publication. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janhwij Sharma, for speaking on behalf of DGASI. We do understand that ASI has a huge role, and you have well stated the challenges that our country has to deal with while adding to the UNESCO World Heritage List. As our last panelist for this inaugural session, I request Dr. Mathur, Chairperson, Biodiversity National Authority of India, to throw some light on the status and potential of natural World Heritage sites in India. Dr. Mathur, over to you.
Thank you, Shikha, and a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the National Biodiversity Authority of India, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and on my own behalf, I would like to compliment the UNESCO Delhi office and its partners for organizing this great event today as part of the larger webinar series. I must reiterate that natural and cultural heritage, along with the manifold diversity, is the lifeblood of vibrant societies all over the world. Currently, as the world enters the second year of this devastating COVID-19 pandemic, engaging with cultural and natural heritage becomes very crucial for humanity. This engagement is necessary because we want to stay connected. We want to be more resilient, and we must be able to protect the legacy of the past and hand it down to future generations. And therefore, I would reiterate that this event today is a step in the right direction and needs to be celebrated in the big way as we are doing. Now, thinking back on the India's history as far as natural heritage conservation nominations are concerned, we too started early in the early 1980s when we successfully inscribed a few sites. But then came a period of lull, and it was only in the run-up to the most coveted natural heritage nomination, and I am referring to the 39 serial sites of the Western Ghats in 2012, that the natural heritage conservation in India gained momentum. And as was mentioned, India was member of the committee twice, and during that period, we had great opportunities to interact with colleagues, with professionals, and see to it that the natural heritage in India got its due. And I must say with pride that there has been no looking back. The first recognition came when UNESCO decided that the world's first, and mind you, the only center or categories center on natural heritage management, conservation and management was set up at the Wildlife Institute of India in 2014. I do remember, as was being mentioned, the critical role played by late Mr. Oberoi as an ambassador over there. We had hours and hours of discussion with him and to convince that India could take up this responsibility. And there were a protected process of nomination or selection of India's center, but through a very rigorous process, I am very pleased to say that WII became the world's first center, and it is going very strong. Initially, we were asked to set up a center for South Asia, then it moved to Asia, and then finally the executive board of the UNESCO decided that it should cover the entire Asia Pacific region. So this is a big feather in cap of India, that we have a mandate now for looking at and building the capacities of natural heritage professionals of over 50 countries in the Asia Pacific region. Now, while these laurels are good, these nominations are good, we still have a very long way to go in truly securing and strengthening the natural heritage conservation. And we do have worked out a roadmap. The roadmap is not so difficult. Of course, implementing it and walking it is a challenge. But what we need to do, and that's what UNESCO has been saying, that we need to have a critical review of our tentative list of natural heritage properties. It is much better in case of cultural properties, I would say, but the natural properties also need to be given a critical look. And there is a basis for doing that. We need to have a biogeographic representation. To give you a few examples, if you look at India's natural heritage list, the mountains are, while adequately represented or more representative, if I can say so, but there are very other important landscapes, such as the deserts, such as the semi-arid landscapes. They need focused attention. So it would be in our interest to have a relook, to have a review of our tentative list, and to see that all representative sites are covered. UNESCO talks about a balanced representation. So we need a geographic balance on that. We need a credible list. Not that it is not there and not credible, but definitely we can subject it to more rigor. Because I have no hesitation in saying that in the earlier days, we just wanted to put a site on the tentative list. But today, if we were to look at this list, we need to assess it whether it will pass muster in the final evaluation. And if there is an iota of doubt on that, we need to change our selection or pick up a site which has a greater chance of success. And that is pretty known looking at the strength, and the process of assessment is very, very rigorous. No two opinions about that. Now, at the same time, while we look at the tentative listing, we also need to look at carefully what is the status of management in the already listed sites. So there are natural heritage sites which have been listed, and obviously every site needs to be governed by a management plan. Interestingly for India, and as is true for many countries in the world, that these heritage sites that we have inscribed are also prominent national parks of India. Whether it is we are talking of Sundarbans, or whether we are talking of Manas, or whether we are talking of Kaziranga or Kevladev or the Great Himalayan National Park or the Kanchenjunga, these are all very prominent national parks of India, and these have a very long history of management. But this management is largely looking at the wildlife values, at the forested values, and the nature values over there. But these sites are now on the natural heritage listing, which means that we need to align them. We need to strengthen the heritage management part of that. These are not very different things, but we need to bring in that alignment and need to ensure that heritage conservation gets a boost. And I will give one example. I mentioned about the 39 sites or the serial sites in Western Ghats. These sites can be organized in clusters for the purpose of tourism. And as the chair NITI Ayog was mentioning about tourism, and Shikha said the important role of tourism which the natural and cultural sites can play, we need to look at that how do we leverage, how do we package the natural heritage tourism clusters. And that would be a big, big boost to our culture, because these 39 sites which I talk about are 19 of them are in Kerala, 10 in Karnataka, 6 in Tamil Nadu, and 4 in Maharashtra. So you can create loops, you can create clusters. This is what we need to do. We did mention it in our dossier, but we need to take up this work. And again, pointing out, as was being mentioned, which is the best entity to do that. And certainly it is the Category 2 Center at the Wildlife Institute of India, which should have both the mandate and the responsibility to look into these things. So we need a revision and a review of our tentative list. We need to align our management plans with the natural heritage focus in it. And we need to organize tourism in a far more blended and mosaic manner using a cluster approach. These are being followed in prominent areas, and wherever serial sites are there, people like to have a variability and a kind of a experience which gives them a very nice feeling of what is available in the sites in Karnataka, Kerala, and so on and so forth. So with these, I would say that all the actors in the World Heritage Convention need to work together, because we now have severe challenges. We have challenges, as everyone has faced through the pandemic, but more than that, I would like to flag the looming threat of climate change. This climate change threats, as every biologist and even non-biologist understands, that is a real threat. And if sites are, whether through excessive stochastic events or through large amount of rainfall or snowfall, if these sites get affected, then definitely people would recall that during the Kedarnath tragedy, one of the biggest challenge was that what is happening to the temple. And similarly, we need to have a risk preparedness. UNESCO is very well prepared, but we need to look at, in the Indian context, how do we do our disaster risk management strategies. And I'm sure my colleagues and Dr. Sonali in particular, who has been dealing with DRR, will come up to some more ideas when she intervenes a little while. But we need to work together. Lastly, I would like to quote what Claude Lévi-Strauss said. The diversity of cultures is behind us. It is around us and it is in front of us. So everywhere you look around, you will find that we need to stay on course. We need to forge ahead. And I'm very confident that the World Natural Heritage Conservation in India will become stronger and stronger each day with our collective actions and efforts. With these words, I thank you once again for providing this opportunity. We need to go very strong. We need to forge very strong linkages with both culture and nature and all ministries which are part of the cultural and natural heritage process. Thank you once again, and back to you, Shikha.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. Those were really very relevant recommendations, to recognize not only the natural heritage, but the mixed heritage with its cultural value. And as you rightly said, that's the way to move forward. We hope you'll stay till the end. I can see a lot of questions, but we will take it at the end for all panelists.